recording. Okay, you might be getting a little pop-up on
I
your
will.
screen.
I likely will. Let me see. No, it's telling me, but it's not asking for permission. It's just saying the
Oh,
meeting is being recorded.
super, super. And I just want to, if I can, grab
I'm going to
the
take a
write-up
photo.
that you did here.
I'm in front of a window. It's very sunny.
Okay. So yeah, the way I look at this, Melissa, it's just going to be a conversation just between
Oh,
you and me. And if we need to edit parts out, afterwards, we'll do that. But just as we've been talking up until now.
no
So
problem.
I will introduce you and kick it off by asking you a little bit about yourself.
Perfect.
Hello, everybody. This is Mike DeBliss. I am so excited today. I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Melissa Brown. Melissa is going to be teaching the class on Alexander technique for trial lawyers, learning skills to deal with the nerves that get in the way. And Melissa, I've got Melissa here with me right now. And Melissa, your background is so rich when it comes to both the legal sector and the performing arts, and of course Alexander. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, relevant to our audience today is that I was a lawyer for most of my life, my professional life. So, kind of being at the tail end of the 60s, I was very interested in sort of helping folks and decided the best way for me, given the kinds of work I was doing, was to go into law. And I was mostly a public interest lawyer, civil rights attorney. I actually started my work as a public defender at Legal Aid, Criminal Defense Division. So that was trial by fire. And talk about nerves, being a young person. I mean, in the 20s and having this huge caseload and on my feet all the time and very challenging work and a lot of responsibility. So just having people's freedom in my hand, quite literally, and having that kind of caseload and having to present all the time and convince all the time. And, you know, jury trials is what you do in that forum. A lot of pressure. And as I always say about myself, is that I am truly an A personality and always have been. And I know many lawyers are. And even if you're not, the nerves are always still there. But to me, working hard was just like par for the course. I worked all the time. And having that kind of personality and being on my feet and having all that responsibility has a lot of stress. So I really loved my work, but I found it really stressful. I loved it because it was kind of exciting and fun and interesting, but it also wasn't something that I could sustain for a long period of time. I tried cases in that form for about 6 years.
Wow. How did you cope with the stress that you were experiencing from your caseload?
Back then, I'm going to be really honest, not very well. Not very well. So what happened was I transitioned to being a labor lawyer, working for a union, and then after that, working with people with disabilities, doing civil rights law. In all of these different forums, the stress was not that easy for me. And there came a time for different reasons, really not related to stress. I began to study the Alexander technique. And that was really life-changing for me. It's when I found the technique that I really learned how to, what I say is calm the central nervous system, basically, really feel planted and centered. And it's just been a life-changing event for me. I work a lot with performing artists now because they kind of, like trial attorneys, on their feet, need really to be present in the moment and get out of their head. It's when you see actors who are like worried in their head, thinking about what they're doing, they seem to be acting. When they're present in the moment and they're grounded and they're really there and they're really with their partner, excuse me, that's when you start to see authenticity. You start to feel that person is real, not acting. And honestly, I used these same skills when I was on trial. And boy, it helped me so much. I knew I wanted to bring it to actors. And just what's happened now is actually you've approached me and asked me to come back and work with trial attorneys. And it's a really exciting idea for me, something I had not done as an Alexander teacher.
Wow. Are there specific exercises, Melissa, that you lead the participants through in a typical
Yeah.
Alexander session?
Yes. What I'm really teaching people to do is to identify tension habits. So what we look at in the Alexander technique is what are you doing to yourself to pull yourself in and down? And we really identify those habits. And those can be habits both, I'm sorry, I'm going to just turn off my phone here, which is beeping. Those can be habits, not just of body, just not, maybe I'm a person who's up here all the time. This is not conducive to grounding and centering, right? But there's also habits of mind that we look at. Can we really, as we go through our Alexander work, can we really stay open-minded and less judgmental and less pushy? As that A personality type, I'm really familiar with wanting to be perfect all the time. This did not serve me, and I like to work with my students, not just on finding out and undoing what their physical tension habits are, but mental tension habits as well. And we engage in many different activities as we explore what we're doing, both in our bodies and our mind. I
Mm.
can go into some of those if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
I think what I like to look at in the beginning, and this is typical Alexander work, is we'll really look in the beginning at typical daily activities like sitting, standing, walking. And we really try to see what are we doing when we're sitting, standing, and walking. And can I demonstrate this for you as I'm sitting in my chair? Because I think this is kind of helpful. So you tell me, I'm just going to move back a little in my space. You tell me when you can see me. It doesn't have to be, I want you to be able to see where I'm seated up through my head. So you don't have my head right now, right?
No, I have your torso, Melissa, from yeah, up to your shoulders.
Okay, let me just take a look. See if this covers it. Yeah. Okay, this is what I want to show.
Mm.
So here's an example. When people sit all day, they get very crunched and tense, right?
Mm.
People say they kind of slump in their chair like that, right? So
Yes.
that might feel okay for a little while, but actually over time, that's going to get really tight, right? And we don't want to be, imagine that on your feet. It would be something like, yeah, something like this. You can't be here and be free and grounded. I have a tight neck, my glutes are tight. These are the kinds of habits that really pull us out of alignment. So what we do in the beginning, let me just get this back, is I'm going to be asking you really how to find a way to sit without collapsing or, like we are taught to do in school, going military to have good posture. We really want to find a balanced, easy upright. And we'll work with, for example, one thing we start with is to sit. You take your hands and you find your two sit bones. If you don't know where they are, they're the knobby bones at the bottom of your pelvis. And if you place your hands under your glutes, sort of toward the back, you will feel them. And I want you to just find that bone because that's the rocker bone that your spine balances on. So from where you have your hands now, so you don't hurt yourself, you'll just take your hands out, let those bones spread, and see if you can find a little bit of balance rocking back and forth on those bones. So I don't want to sit on my tailbone, and I don't want to go military, push my chest forward and kind of sit on my thighs. I want to find those bones and sit on them. So as an example of coming out of tension and really beginning to find an easy upright, and I wouldn't expect anybody watching me in these 2 minutes to get this, but I'm just giving you an example of ways we can sit and get up and walk and move and come to standing that allow us to find an elongated spine, not a collapsed one. So we're looking to undo habitual tension patterns because whether it's because we're imitating parents or we've gone through life and we just have stresses, we all pull in and down. And the Alexander technique allows us to undo the tension that creates that pulling down and to find a lovely way to sort of flow into length and width. And what is so critical about the work, I think, is there are modalities that teach us how to relax. I don't want you being collapsed going into trial. No, you need to unstiffen your habits. That's the first thing. Become aware of your tension habits. It's mostly body when we work, but I will keep you from getting too fixated and judgy as well, and remind you to be easy and exploratory through class. We want to undo tension habits, but not to collapse, to unstiffen into flow. And the way we find that flow is there's a specific thing that Alexander discovered. It's not an individual pattern. Initially, we're looking everyone has tension patterns that are unique to them, but I can teach a group because they're really variations on a theme. But once we unstiffen those habits, simply by finding those sit bones and not being behind them or in front of them, but really letting that happen. Once we unstiffen our habits to find flow, there's a specific way we look at the relationship of the head, the neck, and the back, the whole spine. And we will work at ways of undoing patterns that we all share to some degree or another, so that we can find that expansiveness, that readiness, so that when you go on trial, you're not only undoing tension, but finding a real flow, a real expansion, a real kind of readiness to be there. And that kind of state where you're not up here, and once you're up here, how are you going to breathe? And we will do a little work together with the lawyers on Alexander breath work, which is different. There's similarities, I think, with what they'll learn in the Linkletter work, but it is in its way just encouraging us to get out of the way and let the diaphragm work. We really want to see you undo whatever tension habits you have that impede breathing, as well as impede your basic use of yourself, the way you move through space. So,
Melissa, is it possible to maintain that sense of ease even when, quite literally, you are being ambushed by objections from an adversary that you may not have even been, that might have not even have been on your radar before you stood up to start your opening or to start your closing? The courtroom is being like the Roman Colosseum of
yeah.
sorts, that you don't know what's going to happen next, and a lot of stuff comes at you, fast and furious in a pillage and plunder like environment. A lot of lawyers might ask the question, is it possible to maintain that ease and to train the body not to stiffen up right away when, something unexpected comes up that derails you from what you were previously doing?
That's a great question. I love that question. No, it's a great question. Actually, when you really become familiar with this practice, the way I knew that it really worked was that in my daily life, when I didn't have a stressor, I didn't notice it as much. But as soon as you have a stressor, if your body has paused and undone and lengthened and widened, and it likes that, you don't even necessarily, when I speak to a large group of people, that's not I'm not an actor. And when I tried cases, it's like 12 people, right? That's new for me. And you've been in one of my classes where it was quite large. That's a bit of a stimulus for me.
Mm.
And what's so amazing, my voice becomes more resonant. I immediately, it's like when you begin to work this way, you will find that under stress, it will begin to happen automatically. And I don't think it takes all that much. But here's just so that you understand a little bit about this work in terms of stimulus. I always say, I was a type A personality, quite perfectionistic, quite reactive. I still am, but just much better. When the subway, excuse me, just gonna, when the subway used to come in, and I'm in New York City, so subway's coming in. As I watched it, if I wasn't through the turnstile, this is in the old days where we had, but now we have Metro cards, but say Metro card. I could never find my Metro card because my shoulders would go up to here and I'd be like this. And what did I learn? That in that moment, you take the breath and you pause and you allow. And I never miss the subway anymore. It's just a totally different self. I think when you learn this technique, it is so much a better way for the mind and body to go through living that it just starts to happen. So I would say, would it happen after the first week? Probably not. But when there's a stimulus, you really need to we take a beat and I will teach that to you. There's that moment of pause. And what's so lovely about it is you get to make a choice. You can go off. And sometimes that's totally appropriate. It could even be with an adversary, right? In court, but the idea that you don't need to react, but that maybe you could just respond in a
Mm.
different way, you start getting those tools. So whether it's because you free your jaw, you find your feet, you take a breath, you take that pause. And what a lovely thing to have more agency
Mm.
when things go crazy in the courtroom. And this is the same in life. It's so funny because now that you're talking, I've worked with actors for so long, I kind of forget. Like actors are scripted. There's any stuff can go down when you're in court. But what I did find as a young person, I was really up here. And I worked so hard, I did really, really well. But I would be very reactive
Mm.
in terms of when things. And as I learned the work, I was still trying cases, not criminal defense, so less stress than that, but still trying cases always. I really began to have so many more options and my focus changed. It's not that I didn't focus before or hear but I got to the place where just taking the beat is so important. And you can do that.
Yes. I love that you talk about taking agency. And I think that many of us lawyers think that, there's a gun to our head, and the moment we stand up is the moment that words have to start, coming out of our mouth. But it is so nice sometimes to just check in with yourself, and take that deep breath before you get started. And that gives you a sense, like you said, of agency of, I'm going to make sure that I'm ready to start, and I'm gonna, take the time I need for that.
And when I teach auditions, because I do teach the old-fashioned kind, not the new kind where the kids are all on, I don't know, computers, I don't know, they make tapes. But in the old days, right? I teach them to pause before they come in the door of the room. Take the pause, find your feet, breathe. When they walk in the room, and this would be the same with the trial attorney, the judge addresses you, you stand. There's nothing more powerful than not going. So there's a young man who makes a funny video. I'm going to do it sideways. No, he does. His name is young guy. In fact, I should show this video. I have to get his permission. Where he argues like this.
Oh,
What does that look like? How about this? Stimulus.
yeah,
It's a different presence.
it
And
is.
the pause, even though sometimes you feel these pauses take up so much time and you don't want to take people's time, it is very empowering and
Oh,
it looks very strong. So these are all things that we'll look at. I mean, the beginning of the class, I really will be teaching more daily activities because I want people to understand how to find that ease in the body both undoing their own habits and then looking at their head neck back relationship, because that's really pure Alexandra technique. But the application work, I would love to have people either speak a closing and opening that they have or they had in moot court, or just a poem that I could provide. And going through that process, including your pauses and your undoings and and really looking at that so that people can begin to work that way. And you don't have to be perfect at it. It's an exploration, right? You're going to find that your shoulders up and even for me today, I'll be walking and saying to myself, I've been doing this forever. And I get mad at myself. Why am I still doing this? But there's a mental component. That's a tension habit. What about just saying, oh, good, I noticed. So now I can let it go. And I want to be working with that as well. So I'm really excited about, working with folks who have not done this. And it was so useful to me, both on trial and as a human, that I'm really excited about it.
That's great. As we wind down, rather, Melissa, I wanted to ask you what type of dress would you recommend for the participants, as well as environment, if you will, for to be in during the course of these classes. Obviously, this is going to be on Zoom, and that is one of the questions I'm sure that many will have. So maybe if you could address that.
Sure. Yes. The first thing I would say is just be comfortable. You don't have to wear the clothes you'd wear to go to a gym or a yoga class. But if you choose to wear jeans, like I have jeans on now, but they're very movable. Everything should be movable. We'll be getting up and out of chairs. We'll be walking. There's also lie downs. So in terms of props, or what you're going to need is a chair, because believe it or not, and I'll explain this more, coming in and out of a chair is actually very challenging, in the sense that whatever habits we have of pulling in and down really well, they show up in everything, but we're going to look at it in that very simple context. Just like I showed you about what it's like to come up on your sit bones as opposed to being back or pushed forward. So you need a chair, and that chair should be not a chair on wheels and not a chair that's super cushy. I'm on a wooden chair right now, and my knees, when I sit on the chair and have my feet on the ground, are below my hips. That's preferable. That won't be possible for very tall people. And if you're very short and you need to use the back of the chair, it's always good to have a pillow or a yoga blanket. But those things, I would say, for the most important thing is that the chair is not on wheels, and it's not the kind of chair that's got a little divot in it. And because chairs are constructed to support you in a slouch. So if it can be a flat surface and not on wheels and not too cushy, that would be perfect. That was a long answer about a chair. So I gave you a lot of details. If your knees could be below, that would be good, but not necessary. I mean, anyway, so you need a chair. You'll also need a couple of books or a towel that you can put behind your head, because we will be lying down. And the reason we want that is you have more depth in your torso than you do in sort of the head. So what's going to happen when you lie down is your head's going to go back like this, and that's very tightening. You want to have, I think, some thin books so you can play around with the amount, but you want to have support under your head so that your neck isn't tight and the spine can continue to lengthen up. So for the lie down, you're going to need some books or a towel for under your head. And you might want a yoga mat or access to a rug, if you don't like to lie down on the floor itself. So that's pretty much it. A chair, some books or a towel, and a yoga mat, or it could be a rug, or if you're good on the floor, that's fine too. And when you're working, if possible, when you do a lie down, it would be great if you have like a computer. I have a laptop here. If you have a desktop, this can be more difficult, but you can move it. So you can angle it in a way that I can see you and give you feedback.
Mm.
If that's not possible, that's fine. You'll just lie down and I might not see you for the lie down, but it's really not necessary. But if you want feedback from me as I'm, directing the lie down, it's nice for me to be able to see you.
Wonderful. I want to remind everybody that the dates for the program have been set, and Melissa will be teaching this workshop on Thursday evenings in March. It's going to be, the exact dates are Thursday, March the 6th, Thursday, March 13th, and Thursday, March 20th. It'll begin at 7 p.m. Eastern Time and go to 9 p.m. We're trying to make it as friendly in terms of time zones as well, since many of you will also be from the West Coast or from the Pacific time zone. Melissa, could you tell everyone where they could learn more about you while they're waiting to start the workshop? Do you have a website or social
I
media
do.
presence?
Oh, no, no, sadly, I'm not good at that. I mean, I tried, but that doesn't work for me. But I do have a website and it's a lovely website. I had very good people help me put it together. Actually, so my website is very easy to access. It's melissabrownnyc.com. And if you forget, if you put my name in an Alexander Technique, you'll get my website as well.
Great. Melissa, thank you so much for taking this time. To all the lawyers out there, you do not want to miss this. Melissa is a fabulous teacher, and you can tell how passionate she is about this work. She takes a personal interest in everyone, and you will feel as if it's one-on-one in the Zoom room with her, even though there will be other attendees. I can guarantee you that. And this work is life-altering work. I've been fortunate enough to have done some Alexander training, and I do not leave the house without some of my Alexander work before a big day in court. Forget about whether it's a trial or not. If it's a trial day, any day that I have to be in a courtroom, I know that this work is a staple for my staying grounded and to be the best attorney that I can be for the clients that need me in their dark hour. So this work is so transferable, and again, I cannot speak highly enough for Melissa and her approach to it. So once again, Melissa, thank you so much for taking
Thank
this
you
time.
so much. Appreciate it.
Great. Great, Melissa. Okay.
Thanks
So
so
I'm
much.
going to stop the recording.